For 200 years, people have talked about socialism as if it's a story of class struggle alone. But beneath the surface from the very beginning, the stakes were always about technology. Who wields it? For what purpose? And what kind of future it makes possible? Engels didn't write about the principles of communism to offer a utopian dream world or a fantasy of equality in the clouds. He wrote it as a hard, rational diagnosis of a world thrown upside down by the Industrial Revolution. That's where the socialist project truly begins. In the smoke and steel of the factory, the hum of the loom, the relentless clatter of machines designed to outwork any human. The left, for a brief and brilliant moment, understood that technology was not the enemy. It was a door, either to a new age of freedom or to new chains forged from iron and profit. The steam engine, the spinning jenny, the power loom. These were not mere tools. They were world-altering forces shattering centuries of tradition in a matter of decades. They promised more than just wealth. They promised to lift the burden of backbreaking toil from millions. For the first time, humanity stood at the threshold of a world where no one need starve, where shelter and comfort could be made abundant, and where the ancient order of privilege and misery might be toppled, not by fantasy, but by physics and ingenuity. But that revolution never came, not because the technology failed, but because its spoils were captured. The machines born from the collective genius and generations of human labor ended up owned by a handful of capitalists. The factory became the castle, the loom, the new drawbridge. Instead of emancipation, the working class found itself dispossessed of even the little it had, its tools, its crafts, its independence. The promise of automation became the reality of dependency, as workers were forced to sell not only their labor, but the very possibility of their own future, all to keep the machines running for someone else's gain. Engels was blunt. The machines weren't evil. They were inevitable. The evil was the system that turned them into weapons of extraction and exclusion, rather than engines of shared abundance. The heart of socialism was never about smashing the machines. It was about smashing the barriers that kept their benefits locked behind factory walls and bank vaults. The goal was not to return to hand looms and old guilds, but to seize the means of production, these machines, these engines, these physical miracles, and put them to work for all, not just the few. And for a moment, the left understood. Socialism was not a return to the past, nor a mere protest against inequality. It was a project of rationality, rooted in Enlightenment values of liberty, reason, and progress. The machines, property liberated from the shackles of private capital, could finally do what their inventors only dreamed. Break the tyranny of necessity. Give every person time to grow, to learn, to rest, to create. This was never a story about leveling down or making everyone equally poor. It was about making everyone free, to be sovereign in their own lives, to have a real say in the shape of their world. What happened instead? The Enlightenment torch was dropped. The 20th century was a mess of mischances, bureaucratic nightmares, and new forms of control. Sometimes painted red, sometimes blue. Always gray and suffocating. Socialism so often traded its original mission for either nostalgia or for managing scarcity under new banners. The machine was feared or fetishized, but rarely set free. The left stopped trusting the rational, liberatory power of science and technology. The right, meanwhile, perfected the art of using those very tools to concentrate power, commodify every corner of life, and turn progress itself into a kind of prison. In this betrayal, we all lost. But the fundamentals remain, stubborn as ever. The point of socialism was and still is to finish what the Enlightenment began, to use the power of discovery, of science, of collective ingenuity, not to make a few richer, but to make all of us less bound by necessity. The machines, the infrastructure, the systems that once promised to lift the world, these are still with us. They're faster, more powerful, more interconnected than Engels ever dreamed. The only thing standing between us and liberation is the same old parasite: ownership for the few, poverty for the many, and a culture that mistakes management for freedom. What do we do now? We reclaim the original project. We name the machines for what they are: gifts of collective intelligence, not private treasure. We refuse to let technology be wielded as a club against those who built it. We demand, not in whispers, but with clarity and courage, that the abundance around us be shared, the burdens lifted, and the liberty promised by the Enlightenment finally made real. Socialism, at its root, is the politics of making the machines work for humanity, not the other way around. So if you want to know what the next chapter of progress looks like, don't look for another app or a new gadget or some disruption on Wall Street. Look to the living, breathing world of science, engineering, and honest work. Then ask, who does this serve? Who decides? Who benefits? And when you hear the answer, remember, the machines were always meant to free us. The rest is up to what we do next.